Ready?
That's fine. I haven't go through the No, it's okay. I haven't any 1%. Not a problem. I have plenty.
It got really quiet, so I feel like I should start. But there was also the debate of like, should we wait a few more minutes? But people, they'll come in. So I just want to say thank you guys for coming to the workshop today. I know this is a part of a series, like a GradTrack series, so I'm excited that Scopus is included as a part of this. So just some background, my name is Kristina. I do work for Elsevier. So some of you may not recognize Elsevier as a company, but you may recognize the term Science Direct. And if you don't recognize even that, you might recognize the little tree, right, that shows up in all the articles. So I have been with Elsevier for about 1.5 years working as a customer consultant. So long story short, a lot of my role is doing exactly this. So it's teaching about the products that we offer, how to use them, interacting with students, faculty, you name it. So I'm really well equipped for this role because I, like you guys, was a student. I got my doctorate in science education. So it was kind of a hybrid. I got to investigate science and neuroscience, and then I also got to investigate humanities. So it was really cool. I loved my time. But the one thing that I did not know about in my grad studies was about Scopus. So I went to an institution that had Scopus. I never knew about it. I never went to my library for resources. I did everything online. So if I was going to give you any advice, which you're obviously already engaging with the library, but the library has so many resources, they have so much knowledge, so use them to the best of your ability, and they're always willing to help. So that being said, we are going to move into the workshop for today. So also just if you haven't signed in, there is a physical sign-in sheet, and this is for a raffle. We do have a Kindle to raffle off at the end. So please stick around and see if your name gets chosen. So moving into the workshop. So we're going to kind of break this down a little bit. I have an agenda listed. So we're going to go really briefly over just like what are the goals of research? Why are we here, right? Why are we getting into the process of doing research? And then we're going to move into Scopus. So what is Scopus, right? What can you do with Scopus, and a couple of different topics we'll talk about there. And then I'll do a quick demonstration, and then I'll actually pass it to you guys to do an activity on your computer. So if you brought a computer, you can use that. If you don't have a computer, there are laptops in the back that they will help you set up so that you have internet access. So what are the goals of research? So everyone in here is a student, right? Grad students only, is that accurate? Only graduate level students? Okay, so what do you guys think the goals of research are? Just broadly, this is not like a quiz, you're not going to get graded. Any ideas? Yeah? Sure, yeah, like new developments, right? So we're exploring new topics, we're trying to make new discoveries potentially, right? Any other ideas? That's kind of the general idea, right? So if we break it down a little bit, there's a couple different reasons why people get into research and publishing research, right? So the first would be registration. So really registration being a timestamp to officially note who submitted scientific results first, right? So many times in scientific history, people have come up with the same ideas, but the person who gets credit is the person who first published it, right? So registration is a really important aspect of publishing research, as well as certification. So this is really the aspect of peer review. So as you may know, when you submit an article for publication, you typically go through a pretty rigorous peer review process. And this is really just to ensure the validity and integrity of your submission, to make sure that your work is sound and that it's contributing to the body of knowledge, right? So we're trying to advance science in this very large and even faster growing body of knowledge that we're all developing together. The next and probably the most important, dissemination, right? So it's giving us a medium to share our discoveries and our findings that we've done in our own work. And then lastly, preservation. So having these published documents preserves all of our ideas for all of posterity. So how does Scopus really fit into our researcher workflow? So this idea of research and publishing research is kind of why we're all here, right? So we pursue master's level or PhD degrees so that we can get into the field of research, either as a faculty member or working as like a bench scientist. So you guys are very fortunate that you have the tool of Scopus through your institution. Scopus is very helpful when we're looking at the researcher workflow. So you probably learned in grade school about like the scientific method, right? And science is like a very linear process. You think of a question and then you create a hypothesis and you create methods, right? And it's not quite so linear, nor is it that easy. But when we're looking at a typical researcher workflow, we can see that it's very cyclical, right? So we go through preparation steps where we might be applying for a grant or applying to be a part of a research group that you can then research a particular topic. And then you go through items of discovery, so searching and reading and searching and more reading. And then you start to get into the analysis and the writing phases, right? So you're doing your experiments, and it says measurements, which I think is funny because not every scientist measures things, but you're going through your experiments. You may be writing articles, books, your dissertations, right? And then you're submitting through peer review, you're doing your publication, and it kind of goes on, and it's a cyclical process. So one thing that I was kind of sad to find out is, with writing a dissertation, a very, very mega publication, it doesn't feel terminal like I wanted it to. I wanted it to feel like, yes, I am done with something, and in fact, it just opened the door to more questions. So it's this cyclical process, right? And we're just going round and round and asking more questions and answering more questions as we go through our careers. So Scopus, I think, really fits in a couple of stages here. So first, the preparation. So when you're going to write a grant, right, or do an application where you need to reference literature or researchers, and we'll get into all of those details and how Scopus helps with that. It helps with discovery, so literature searching and reading. Scopus is a very powerful tool. And then it helps you with your writing, right? So making sure that you have the correct references, that you're writing the references correctly. So depending on the citation style that you're required to write in, Scopus can help you with that as well. And then lastly, publication. So there's a feature of Scopus we will look at where you can actually look at if you're wanting to publish in a journal, for example, right? You can look at how a journal is trending over time, what the impact of the journal is. If it's trending upwards, is this a journal that's getting a lot of traction and increasing its impact, or is it kind of fading off and maybe we should consider publishing somewhere else? So it gives you all that insight as well. So getting into finally, what is Scopus? So how many people have heard of Scopus? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? How many people of those 5 have actually used it? Okay, 2, 3, 4. That's pretty good, 80%. So for those of you who do not know, and for a recap, or for those of you who have already used the tool, Scopus is an abstract and citation database. So it's got 70 million items, which are considered publications, books, conference proceedings, journal articles. It's got a couple of things that make it very distinct. It's got affiliation profile, so you can look up Florida Institute of Technology and see all of the publications that have been produced here. And then you can also see authors. So there's over 16 million author profiles that exist on Scopus, and we'll get into a little bit more of the details on those author profiles in a minute. So Scopus has a lot of data. So when you have a publication and it is selected to be indexed in Scopus, it comes in and basically we have this really complex algorithm that picks up a couple of different pieces of information. One being, what is the name of the paper? What is the name of the journal, right? What year is it published in? And then it also picks up the affiliation and the author profiles. So really, when you're in Scopus, and again, we'll get to this when I go through the demo, all of this information is like hyperlinked. So you can almost go down a rabbit trail of just clicking and clicking and clicking. But if you're in an article, for example, you can click on any of the authors who contributed to that article, And then it opens up an author profile where you can see all the work that they have done. And then you could maybe click on their institution. So maybe they are at Florida Tech, right? And you want to see what Florida Tech is up to and what subjects they publish in. You can really, you can navigate through Scopus and kind of track all of that information. So this is something that's very unique to Scopus, that we have this article item information, we have the affiliation profiles, and we also have author profiles. So we've talked about this a little bit already. These numbers are not quite up to date. But really, Scopus is the only database that implements an algorithm to create these author and affiliation profiles. So there's all this like fancy technology happening to assign different publications to authors and then authors to affiliations. But it also has a space where you can actually manage this yourself. So if you have a really common name, right? My name is kind of common, Kristina Hopkins, and I have publications. Scopus may not pick up that I'm the same person if I tend to work with a lot of different people or I switch institutions, right? So this may happen especially when you're in a postdoc phase where you're doing a year here and a year there. So what Scopus allows is for you to actually merge your profile, edit your profile so that it's the most accurate representation of you. So we do have an option called the author feedback wizard where you can do all of these manipulations. But really what I wanted to share with you is that it's really important to manage your own profile on Scopus because it's kind of a brand, right? So if you're applying for a grant, someone might look you up in Scopus and see, well, what have they published? What are they up to? Who do they tend to work with? And it also can be really helpful if you're going to apply for a job, right? If we're wanting to try to get a tenure track position somewhere, Scopus can provide really great insights into what you can refer to in your tenure applications, or not your tenure, sorry, excuse me, your tenure track applications, as well as they can look at you. So you want it to be as accurate as possible. So in terms of the content that is in Scopus, Scopus has content from over 5,000 publishers and over 105 different countries. So this is not just the United States, it's not just North America, nor is it just Elsevier's content. Now we do have a larger share of 11%, and maybe larger than some of the other publishers that you recognize up here, but we do have quite a bit of variety. And we also have variety in terms of publication types and publications by subject area. So you can see there's really robust coverage in terms of journals, conference proceedings, and books, as well as coverage in the physical sciences, health sciences, social sciences, and life sciences. So you really get a very broad range of coverage. So the more interesting parts, what can you do with Scopus? So things that might come up when people are trying to figure out how they can use Scopus. Here, these are just a couple of ideas. So maybe you need to keep up to date on a research area. You might be benchmarking your institution against a competitor. That might be something that's happening with the provost office. Not so much here, but something very significant to grad students. You're writing a paper and collecting references, right? Trying to figure out what references should you be relying on, what are the most credible in your field. And then you can manage your researcher profile. We've talked about that. And then you can look for funding opportunities through Scopus. And then monitor your own research impact. So see who's citing you. Are you important, right? So you can do all of this with Scopus. But really what it all boils down to is Scopus is a tool to help you with conducting and publishing research. So a really big question that we get asked very often is, why should I use Scopus and not just Google it? Or maybe use Google Scholar. So how many people have used Google Scholar to find literature? It's okay, I did it too, so don't feel bad. So the thing that makes Scopus so much better than Google Scholar is that Scopus is designed specifically for handling searches for scholarly literature, right? So the information that's covered in Scopus, it goes through a rigorous selection process. You know the quality is there. It's all peer-reviewed. And it actually helps you to avoid something called fraudulent publications. Has anybody heard of fraudulent publications or fraudulent journals? Yeah, so they're pretty hard to recognize. if you're using Google Scholar, for example, but Scopus has a very serious vetting process, so the information in there is guaranteed to not be fraudulent, so you can actually use it in your work. And it's becoming more and more common that when you submit for peer review, the peer review process, they do analyze your references with more scrutiny now that this has become such a thing. So Scopus helps you to avoid that. It's also consistent and it's very transparent. So there's no mystery behind why your search results look the way they do. I think every time I go into Google, if I do the same search, I could come up with different results every time in terms of the order of search results that I see. So what comes up on the first page may be different every time I go into Google. It's also going to be very different when I go in versus when one of you go in, even if we're searching for these same exact parameters. So Google Scholar has some very complex algorithms where they drop certain search results based on the way that you've actually interacted with Google in your own browsing history. So it tries to predict what you think is going to be most important and increase your clickability, essentially. Like, are you actually going to click on these links? So Scopus is not that high tech in terms of dropping results. Everybody's going to get the same search result every time. It may change day to day, but that's only because new information comes into Scopus daily. So don't be alarmed there. Any questions on Google Scholar? Does everybody feel like they should stay away now? So in terms of searching in Scopus, so some things that you can search for in Scopus, you can search for publications or topics, right? So if you have a particular topic area you're looking to search in, which really helps you to discover relevant, peer-reviewed literature, and you can use the citation tools embedded in Scopus to help you create a reference list. You can search for authors and institutions, so this may help you to discover potential collaborators to work with. And it may help you identify very strong authors in your field, right? So part of the publication process is you're trying to convince somebody that your work is really good, right? And part of the best way to do that is to support your work with high quality literature, right? Everybody has to justify why they're doing what they're doing, and that's why we write lit reviews. But if you're not citing the most prominent authors in that area, then it's gonna be where did they get their resources? They're not relying on Dr. Johnson, who is the mega researcher in this field, right? So it brings up some questions. So this helps you to kind of pare down who are the prominent authors in a particular research area that you're working in. And then you can also discover the publications of your professor or mentor. So if you are looking to either move research groups or move into potentially a postdoc situation, it's really good to analyze potential mentors using Scopus. You can see exactly what they're researching, who they work with, what has their funding looked like even. So it gives you some insight into maybe where you should make your next move. And then lastly, there is an advanced searching option. You can write these really, really complex search queries, and you can build it all yourself. So we can go through that as well. So something that I mentioned in the previous slide is Scopus helps you find relevant literature, right? Relevant is kind of like a buzzword when it comes to publishing. So what do you guys think relevant means? Not a trick, promise.
Well, I guess highly cited.
Highly cited, okay. Any others? Doesn't have to be specific to research, just in general, linguistically. What do you think relevant means? Relative, I heard you kind of mouth it. Yeah, so closely connected or appropriate to what is being done or considered. So highly cited is a great example of a very, a research-specific way to describe relevant. Relative, also very similar. And then also appropriate to the current time period or circumstances of contemporary interest. So more recent information, right? That's really gaining traction in a field. This is where you want to be, right? And Scopus can help you find what we call relevant information. So a couple of ways to find more relevant information, creating detailed Scopus searches through the advanced search feature. So the more detailed, the better. It really helps you pare down what exactly you're looking for. And I have a handout to give you on some different search tips on how to rate words and things like that. And then learning to use the search results to your advantage. So Scopus does have almost like an Amazon shopping column. So when you're on Amazon and you search for, I tend to search for like women's blouses, right? There's, thousands, maybe millions of women's blouses on Amazon for me to buy. So it's got a filtering option, right? I want a blouse that's white, that's made of silk, that's long sleeved, right? I can filter everything down on the left-hand side. Scopus has that same option. Obviously, it's not asking you about, shirt colors and sleeve length, but it's asking you about, publication-specific information. You can pare down to, I only want to look at publications that have been funded by the NSF, right, in this research area. I'm only interested in publications that have been published open access since 2016, right? You can make it pretty specific, so you have a lot of options there. And then learning to use search results to your advantage, which is really what we're going to get into today, how to manipulate your search results. And then there is something called the citation chain. Has anyone heard of the citation chain before? Librarians have, yeah. So the citation chain really is this idea that when we write a paper, we have references, right, that go back in time, right? This is work that's already been written. But then there's also citations to come, right, from our work. So we want people to cite us. So what we can do in Scopus is you can, do this really beautiful, complicated search, and then you can actually look at all the references from those publications that came up in your search result. Then you can also move forward in time and look at who has cited that work since it was published. So there's some cool things that you can see just to give you more insight, more publications to perhaps read. And then last thing, which this is a big topic we could talk about at a later date, but know the position of the people you're trying to convince, right? So publishing is all about convincing someone that your work has merit. It's very valuable to know who's on the editing board, right? Who could be potentially reading your paper. They probably all have Scopus profiles, let's be honest. They're usually people that have either researched previously in that field or currently research in that field. So they are considered experts. So you can look at what their profile says, what resources do they tend to rely on when they're writing their publications, right? And then maybe if it's relevant, you could include it in your own work as well, or use it to fuel future work. So one thing, just a little plug, in order to stay up to date, you can create a login for ScienceDirect.com, and this works for all Elsevier products. So once you create a login on ScienceDirect.com, it works for Scopus as well. Same username, same password. And if you create this login while you're on campus, this allows you to have remote access at home. So you may have, well, for the 4 or 5 of you that have used Scopus, maybe you tried to get on at school and it worked, and then you're at home and it doesn't work, right? So creating a login will allow you to work from home. And some of the other benefits that are included when you do create a login is you can track your own search history, so you can go back in time, and see some of those complicated searches that you've done. You don't have to retype everything. You can save certain searches. You can set alerts, so if anything new comes in, you don't have to keep rechecking your search every day. You will get alerted if something new comes in. And then you can also get recommendations. So this is actually a really cool feature. I don't know if you're like me, you might be, I check my email every morning when I'm laying in bed, and I get ScienceDirect recommendations, and I actually read the titles and I see if it's relevant, something that I could use in my own work at Elsevier. I read a lot about libraries, so it really just helps save you time. So the recommendations is not necessarily new content, it's recent content, but it's stuff that is most related to the searches that you've been doing. So, really cool feature. Yes?
For one thing, you can use Scopus from home as well. You just have to go through the library website.
Ah,
So,
good point. Okay.
yeah. I encourage you to make accounts, but you don't have to.
Okay. So go through your library, probably in an A to Z resource page, right? Great. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about some Scopus analysis tools, and then I'll go into a demo of what does this all actually look like. So Scopus, the main feature is this analysis power that it has. You will not see this in Google Scholar. The analysis tools are really important because it helps you identify and analyze which journals you should be reading, where you should be submitting. It helps track the impact of research. So you can look at citations, you can look at article metrics, all of these really complicated things. And then it helps researchers manage their career. So you can manage your citation count and your H-index, making sure that the documents you've actually written are credited to you. So we do have a feature, it's called analyzing your results. So this would be in a scenario where you do a topic search or what we call a document search, and you get a big long list. Say you get like 10,000 articles, right? You can't read 10,000 articles, so you got to figure out what's going to be your next move. So the Analyze Results tool, what it does is helps you kind of visualize what this research looks like holistically. And it provides you some really good starting points for your research workflow, and then you can kind of trail off into your different rabbit trails. So what it does is it looks like this. So I actually pulled a document list from an author profile here, but what you can see is that you see documents by year trending upward over time, right? This author is becoming more engaged in the research. And what you notice is that all of these numbers that have the documents with the arrow, right? It says like 85, 144. Those are all clickable, so you can click on that and see all 85 documents if you would like to. So it's all hyperlinked. But what's more interesting about the Analyze Results part of this is that you get all these little widgets at the bottom of the page. I know it looks a little intimidating, but each of these you can click on it, it expands really largely, you can start to play with the graphs. But what it does is it breaks down those 10,000 articles that you just found into who are the most prolific authors, what sources do they publish in, so what journals are they publishing in most often, what affiliations are researching this area, and then you can also look at country, what types of documents are published, is it articles, or should maybe I look at writing a book, right? Is a book more appropriate? And then lastly, and very importantly, funding sponsor, right? What are the most prolific funders for that particular area? So then a second analysis tool we have is a compare journals tool. So this is more about looking at performance trend of a journal over time. So you can look at different metrics. There's a few different metrics for journals that are included in Scopus. And you can kind of track, based on subject areas, which journal you should probably be looking at to submit your work to. Because I said this previously, but you want to publish somewhere that's on the upward swing, right? It's gaining more visibility and more traction. So when you're in a compare journals feature of Scopus, it looks something like this. So you can see the graph that has, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different sources that we're comparing here. And we're comparing something called the site score. So similar to impact factor, but it's looking at the site score over a year. You can see what's the most prolific, the highest site score journal, which would be Physical Review Letters. And then what is one of the lower options, European Physical Journal C. So you can compare, and you can manipulate these graphs to add up to 10 sources. You can take things away, so you can do a lot of changing. And you can compare across subject area, so it's not just one subject area. And then similar to the document results, you also get these nice little widgets. So you don't have to use CiteScore if for whatever reason you don't trust CiteScore. We do have other options as well. You can look at the citations of the journal by year. You can look at how many documents they've published by year, how much they're not cited, which is really interesting, and how much they write review articles versus more novel research. So it gives you some insight into, based on what you're writing, what's the most appropriate avenue for your publication. And then last thing, really great tool, especially I think for grad students, there's something called the Citation Overview tool. So what this really does is it helps you figure out what the citation trend is for a particular document set. So let's say we have those 10,000 document search results. You can get this graph, which looks really small here. I know it looks a little silly. But you can see what's the citation overview over time. Is this a trending upward area in terms of citations? Is it continuing to have an impact, and is the impact growing? And then you also get this very interesting chart. So this chart is really kind of the pinnacle of the citation overview tool. But what it does is you see all these rows. Those are publications. So those are published journal articles that have been cited in your original document search result. And although a couple of these numbers say 0, don't pay attention to that. These numbers that are highlighted here blue, this says number 1, for example, you can click on that and actually see who the citation was from. So kind of that idea of you can go down these trails of information. There's a lot of information in Scopus, but if you're interested, click on it and Scopus will tell you exactly what those numbers mean. Okay, so next item, establishing and managing your reputation. We've talked about this a little bit already, but we do have author profiles in Scopus. It has a complicated way of using an algorithm to attempt to assign a publication to you. Scopus tends to err on the side of caution. So if Kristina Hopkins at, I don't know, University of Leiden in the Netherlands writes a paper, and it's not going to get assigned to me, right? But in the case that it does, then I can go in and manually manipulate that, right? Take that document out of my publication set. So you have all of these options to help create a very accurate author profile. And this is what an author profile looks like. So this is a faculty professor at Florida Tech. And we can see a lot of different information here. Right under his name, you are assigned a Scopus author ID. This is unique to Scopus. What you can also do is actually attach your ORCID. So does anybody have an ORCID or ORC ID? Two? Yeah, it's great to have one. So your ORC ID is basically universal, not as important as a social security number, but it's like a universal, it's a universal ID number that cuts across all platforms, right? So I have an ORC ID. You can connect your Scopus profile to it, and what that does is that increases your chance of when you get a publication that comes into Scopus that it will be matched correctly. So then you have to do less manual labor, right, to try to make these profiles look really clean. So a couple of other things you can notice on the author profile is you can see the affiliation. So you see Florida Institute of Technology. You can click on that, look at the whole institution. You also see subject area. So these are different tags where this author may be publishing in, broadly speaking, but physics and astronomy, engineering, mathematics. You can see towards the bottom, you get this theme that we like little widgets in Scopus. It looks really good. So we have documents on the very left. Over 1,000 documents, over 48,000 citations, and then you can see their H-index obviously being very high because they have so many citations. So, and then at the bottom you can see the document and citation trends. You see documents that have been published over time and then citations relative to those documents. So you see some nice trending information. If I were me, I would probably want to work with this guy. He seems really, really good at what he does. And then with the author feedback wizard, I know I mentioned it at the beginning, but this is what it looks like. So you can search for your own profile. If multiple profiles come up and they all look like you can request to merge them. And for the librarians, you can do this on behalf of faculty as well. So it doesn't have to be you. And then you can also update your affiliation. So some other news before I get into more of a demonstration. There's lots of ways to stay very informed about Scopus. So there are trainings and information always available online. There's a Scopus YouTube channel, so much shorter videos, 2 to 3 minutes typically, on how to use some of these different tools. We have a Scopus website, so blog.scopus.com, which has information. And then we also have a Librarians Connect website, as well as Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. So those would be more for real-time updates if systems are down or not working, which evidently does happen. Then you can go to Twitter and let them know very quickly. Any questions on what I've presented so far? I know it was kind of a broad overview, but we're going to go into a demo and you'll see a little bit more. Yeah?
Well, it's actually really specific because you say that we can manage our own author profile, but what happens if I go to another institution or university which doesn't have / support Scopus?
That's a good question.
Given the possibility to keep managing it, because I guess since I won't be getting the access to Science Direct anymore, so all the publications and everything, including Scopus, what's going to happen?
Yeah, that's a really great question. the thing that I would do in that case, I can't say with 100% certainty, is we have a help desk that can help you. It does have a chat feature, so if you don't want to talk to anyone on the phone, then you can chat with them and express to them your concerns, but typically it does go by institutional allowance, so if you don't have access, yeah.
So I can manage it anymore.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if you work with the help desk, typically they can help you with something like that.
Thank you.
Also, if you do attach your ORCID ID to it, there's very good odds that they will accurately keep your profile up to date. So just whenever you submit a paper, be sure to include it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not to scare you. The errors are not like, I mean, they're not incredibly common. Yeah, but they do happen, so it's nice to be aware. And the errors actually more commonly happen when people are citing you and maybe they spell your name wrong, or they only include one initial instead of both, if you like both, things like that. So, yes. Any other questions? Nope? Okay. Okay, so I think I'm supposed to hit tab. No. How do I go between screens? Alt tab? Ah, okay. Where's the mouse?
This is touch screen, so are you going to, do you
Oh,
have a demo set up already, or are you just going to Chrome?
yeah. Just the internet is fine. Oh, fascinating.
Do you need to go
Great.
to Scopus? To our website?
Your IP should pick it up. Perfect. Okay, so this is what Scopus looks like. Oh, thank you. Very high tech in here. So this is what Scopus looks like. Every time you go to Scopus, it's always going to look like this. You're always going to have the document search first. It is the more common way of searching. But what you'll see is you can pan between documents, authors, and affiliations, as well as click on the advanced search. And then up at the top, you see we're in the searching tab, right? So what we would be doing in this case is searching. But what you can do is also click on sources. So when we talked about all the comparing journals, right, and looking at trends over time, you would do that in the sources tab. So I want to point that out to you so you know exactly where it is. So we can do a search. Okay, I do have a functional mouse. It's kind of fading. Okay. So I thought of a decently simple search. So first let me pass these out. Yeah, that would be great. You could do that half. So the document I'm handing out to you is the Scopus search tips. So this is all different ways essentially that you can write words so that it picks up either more or less search results based on what you're interested in. So just a couple of different tips for you, things that may be automated when you're searching in Scopus, stuff like that. So I'm going to do a search here. And this was something I studied when I was in grad school. So let's see. Let me type it first. Okay, so what I'm going to search is emote with a star. So what that means is I'm looking for emotion, emotional, emotionally, any version of emote, even emotive, which may be, maybe, yeah. Yeah, really anything, emote, etc. right? So what I did was I did emote star memory, and that's within quotation marks. So hopefully emoticon memory is not a search term, but what the brackets do is it creates a phrase. So if I were to just search emote, memory, and recall, it would say like emote and memory and recall. So it wouldn't pick up a phrase, right? So what the brackets do is kind of seal everything together. I'm really looking for anything related to emotion, memory, or emotional memory, and recall. And Scopus automatically will pick up searching in the article title, the abstract, and the keywords. But you can change this field. So obviously, if you're looking for topics, you're searching in topics, that topic is going to be in the journal, or in the journal article title, not so much in the journal title. So for the most part, searching by article title, abstract, and keyword works really well. But for whatever reason, if you need to change those parameters, you just click on this little arrow. And then we click enter. And we are searching in Scopus. So we'll just let it load here. Ah. Come on. Oh, it's not picking up the. It's interesting. There we go. So 531 document results for my specific search. That's a lot of documents. I don't think I'm going to be able to read everything. So what I can do is, this is really important, analyze search results here, which we'll get into. If you want to do anything like exporting, download the citation overview, you actually have to go in and check which ones you want to actually look at or export. So you can click all to view the whole citation overview. The citation overview only does a maximum of 2,000 documents at a time. That's because it takes a while to generate a citation overview. If you need more than 2,000, you get an email in like 5 to 7 days. Someone on the back end of Scopus is compiling that for you manually. But also what you can do is you can export. So one thing to clarify here so that you don't crash your computer, the difference between export and download. So these pop up a lot. If you click download, that means you're about to download as many of these as you have access to, which will crash your computer. It's way too much. Most computers don't have enough RAM to handle that type of download. But what you can do is click export, which is the more important function. So what we can do is we can export these 531 documents, the abstract and citation information, into Mendeley, which is also an Elsevier product, but I do love Mendeley, or to any other format. So if you use EndNote, for example, right, EndNote's a popular one as well, then you can download into the RIS format and then dump it right into EndNote. And then you can also export just a simple Excel file, and you can click exactly what information you want to export. So it's all available for you to select. But what we're going to do here is we're going to click on the Analyze Search Results. So we see the nice, like, pretty widgets are going to load. Fortunately for me, I don't research this topic anymore because it is kind of declining. But we can see the document trend over year. So we can see exactly what documents are here. And if we click on them, we get the whole document list, right? And we can see that it's growing over time. And if we scroll down, oops, excuse me, we can see all the other widgets as well. So if I'm interested in what affiliations, maybe I'm interested in applying for a tenure track position, which I am not, but this might help me figure out where I should be looking to apply, right? So you can see that the widgets they're pretty functional, they're pretty easy to move around. Let's see. Aha. Funding sponsor. So funding information is actually something that's rather new to Scopus, something that they've started to include more so. But you can see here all the funding information, maybe where we should be looking to apply for our funding. Any questions on these types of document searches? Okay. One thing to also note, the back button on your browser is actually functional with Scopus. So you may have been on a website where you click the back arrow and it's like, are you sure you want to submit or resubmit? Or it keeps saying submit over and over again. And I'm not sure exactly what they're asking, but with Scopus it is functional, so no questions about resubmitting. You just go right back to the page you were on previously. So, and the forward button works as well. You can navigate back and forth. And then here you can see that this is where you set your alerts. You can set an RSS feed if you want to as well. And then you can actually view patents as well. So if there's any chemistry, yeah, that would be important, or engineering, you can view patent information, and it does link out to the actual patent. And then last, Mendeley data. So is anyone familiar with like open access, open research publishing, right? Yeah. Some mandates for open publishing is that you have to also make your data sets open and freely available online, Mendeley data is a way to do that. So you can link out to see the data if you would like to. So we can see a couple of other things here. Sort on, it always defaults to date newest. So you're going to see the newest publications, right? So these are actually publications that are going to be published as of next year, right? 2020. These are new, very, very new. So obviously they have not been cited yet. But what you can do is you can manipulate these lists to maybe the oldest date, what's the most cited, and then you can also look at relevance, and then source title and author names. And then this is the Amazon column I was talking about. So you can limit to open access if you would like to, which would more so guarantee that you have access to the full text. This may also be important if your funding sponsor is really pushing for open access. You want to use open access materials in your own work as well, right? Show that you're supporting the cause. And then you can also filter down by year, author name, subject area, as well as many, many other things. So you can see, you can actually narrow down by funding sponsor, which we've looked at, keywords, which are self-identified when you submit for the journal. Any questions on that? Okay. The other thing I'm just going to show you really quickly, and then we're going to move into a little bit of an activity. We have about 10 minutes, is the advanced searching. So this is what's called my query string, right? This is what I'm actually searching for, and I have all of these operators and field codes available to me to build out something really complicated if I would like to. So the nice thing about Scopus is it does define everything for you. So whether you're looking at field codes or maybe you're looking at journal metrics, it tells you exactly what everything is. Very helpful. So if you just hover over these, then you can see all of the different options. Maybe I want to search right within the abstract only, right? Or I want to search only for specific biological or chemical entities, right? It's got CAS registry numbers. If you're searching for particular funding sponsors, right? You can build out these really complicated queries. Not necessary to make the most meaning out of Scopus, but it is available to you if you would like to do so. So that said, now we're going to move into an activity. We have about 10 minutes, and there's 12 questions, so if you're really good at Scopus, then you'll get through it. But really, this is just to give you some insight into how to use Scopus to your advantage, especially when you're looking at the differences between document or topic searches. There should be two there. In comparison to looking more directly at like an institution, for example. So we have about 10 minutes. We'll come back together briefly at the end, but feel free to like work in partners or small groups in your little half rows, and I'll kind of float around. If you have questions, just let me know. And you can talk during this part. You gotta raise it higher. Yeah.
I have for research before 2014, which is not Scorpions. So if I create account, it will hurt my CV because it's not Scorpions. So if I need, I'm close to publish paper. So if I create and publish with this tool, so it will be, because I have CV but the paper is not Scorpions. So
Like it's not in Scopus, you mean?
yeah. So
Okay.
probably I don't know the journal, we enjoy the Scorpions yet or not. I don't don't know. So
Yeah, so
that's how it's work with the building CV.
yeah.
Points. So maybe if I open
So
account, it will be heard.
yeah, yeah.
You understand?
Have you looked to see if you have a profile on Scopus and if it lists any information? Okay. So Scopus, like information is very selective when it comes into Scopus. So it could be like,
Probably best idea when I'm close to publish, I open an account. So this will be best.
well, the account is automatically made, so you don't necessarily open. Like, are you talking about the author profiles? You don't have to go open an author profile. It's automatically created for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So no,
So
if company apply for a company or other, so they look for Scorpions to see if I am researcher. So
right,
that's,
right.
you know.
That's where the CV is more important, right?
Yeah.
So having something on your CV that shows that you're in press, right? Very close to publication versus actually being indexed, right? Because
Yes.
it takes some time. There's a lag time. So that's what I would recommend. Keeping it on your CV and just say, being transparent with
Yep.
your whoever's interviewing you, right?
So is there any relationship with the journal impact factor with the Scorpions?
The journal impact factor,
Yeah.
we have site score, which is similar
So they have Scorpions have site score for the journals.
for the journals. Yeah, there's multiple journal metrics in there, but site score is the
So
best one.
If you have time, you can show us how to see these.
The journal metrics, I can show you right now. Do you have Scopus
okay.
open?
Huh?
Okay, so do you want to just search for a topic, any topic?
Anything like.
Okay, so if you scroll down, here we see the source listed, right?
Yeah.
Let's actually change this. We're going to change this to be highest cited. So we see here, and this is the name of the
Yeah.
source. So astronomy and
That's-
astrophysics, I'm sure you've heard of it.
Mm.
This is what the source details look like. You can see when it's been covered in
I
Scopus.
see,
So sometimes
yeah.
there are gaps. There may be years where they
I
are not
see,
covered in
yep.
Scopus for whatever reason.
Mm.
But these are all your metrics. So you have site score, you have SJR, and you have SNP.
I see.
They're defined. So if you're not sure what SJR is, you can click on that. It tells you exactly how it's calculated. And then down here, it actually tells you the
The
exact
citation.
numbers
I
that
see.
create this number. So this is the most similar to impact factor.
I see. Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
you're welcome. Oh. So that's where you click. Let's see. Sorry, I left a little hair there. Top open access. So how many documents have been published? She wrote 4,000.
So this one.
Perfect. Yeah.
Then to find the open access, I just choose open access.
And click limit.
Two.
Perfect.
Then I see authors. The first one has 30.
Yep. And then let's see, how many citations have the number of published documents received? So what you'll do here,
So are you talking in general or based on this open access?
based on this one, yeah. So what you'll do is you click all, and you click view cited by. So who has cited all of these documents since it's happened? Does that make sense?
Yeah, but
So if you click on that,
if I put all, does it mean it's clicked all the 4,000?
no, only the ones that are listed here. So only the however many there are.
Because the open access still so many.
Right, there's going to be a lot, right? No, it's selecting all 2,000 documents here when you click all. And then if you click view cited by,
2,000.
so 12,000 it's 12,000 citations. So you can see who's been using that work since it was published.
If we can do it by hand, forever.
Exactly. It saves you time.
So if I wanna go back,
Yep, just click back. And then if you want to back out of this, just use the back arrow. Yep, and then it's back to the regular.
And if I wanna just specific, then I go to edit,
Like if you want to start over. Yeah, you can click edit.
right? Change, and then edit.
Yeah, so then you can just change it here and then click search again. Yeah, and then if you click viewed cited by, so who cited those two papers, we see 0, right? Because those were published too new to have citations yet. So click this X really quickly for me. Scroll back up to the very top. Scroll to the top of the page. See how there's 4,000 documents? 2,000 is the max for a citation overview. So once you've limited this down to 2,000, so if you limit it to like,
2019.
yeah, and click limit.
Do you work at the library?
No, I work at Elsevier. I work for like Scopus, yeah.
So if I go to our library and search for a book, is everything?
You mean your
included?
catalog?
Yeah.
It's not the same as this, no. This is everything. The catalog is only what the catalog has.
Like their catalog here is for a book.
This is a librarian question. The difference in searching in the catalog versus Scopus.
Yes.
Is it the same?
And it's not the same.
Is different. Scopus is a carefully curated collection of journal articles.
Are you guys good? Have any questions?
We don't necessarily
Okay. How many citations have they received? Yeah. So the way that I do that is I click on all to select all. And then I click on view cited by. So that will give you a nice number of how many documents have actually cited that big document set for previously. So 9,000, which is quite robust. Right up here.
Oh. Thanks.
You're welcome. Yeah. Hey.
I have challenges to find the best journal for publishing the paper.
Okay.
So, does the Scopus maybe help us to find what's the appropriate journal to publish in?
Yeah. So where are you starting in terms of like trying to find, like a journal, for example, to publish in?
Yeah.
You can click on sources at the very top.
So,
Yeah. Load and then click sources. And so what you can do here is you can enter a subject area. So whatever subject area you are working in, you can do something really broad like agricultural science, right? Or you can get really specific, like aging. So if we click on aging, for example, that's actually really good, a good one. When I click on that, it should load. Oh, come on. Click apply.
what articles are out there at all, that's when you would use that right there. So if you want to know, the big names, that's when you use Scopus.
Load. Okay, 55 options, 55 journals. I scrolled too much. So what you'll basically be able to see is the source title and then different metrics that you would like to, use. This is scrolling opposite. There we go. And you can also see like the percentile ranking of it, as well as how many citations that journal receives, things like that. So these are ways that you can try to establish like what are the journals relative to my research area and where should I be looking. So, you're welcome. Yeah.
Well, we stuck actually in a
Everyone's stuck on that one. That one's a tough one. So do you have the search list up somewhere?
Yes.
On your computer?
Yeah, because we find a lot of open access.
Yeah.
Yeah, 24 and 27, so we don't know actually
So-
what you want.
Yeah. Okay, so if we scroll back to the very top, 1800 results. Here we can limit to all the open access ones. So if I click limit, right, are you guys seeing this too?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
You click limit to the open access. Okay. Okay, so 933 documents where you can see the most prolific authors here, right?
Which is you want to OEA, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then if you want to see how many citations have all these documents received, you click all, and then you can click on view cited by, or you can click the citation overview, and it will tell you how many citations are. So if we click view cited by, for example, it tells you how many documents have cited all of that work.
Yeah, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And then you can just click the back arrow if you want to go back. No problem. Takes a little bit to load. That's because everyone's on Scopus right now.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you very
you're welcome.
It has a list of different databases that are
How are you doing over here?
Good, but I can't find the station.
Yeah. So when you're in the list, this is the list of search results. Yeah. If you click on all, right, we're going to select all of them. We can view.
This one, station overview.
Where are we? Oh, these are authors. Look, these are authors.
In the second part.
Oh, okay. Is it over here maybe? Yes, yes.
First author for the
So, yeah, so if we click all, then we're given the option to view cited by or view the citation overview,
Okay.
right? So if we click view cited by, for example, 1,500 documents have cited all of those papers. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. And the tips counter, what is that?
That's this.
Okay.
So what does it mean when you write like pregnant with a star?
It's everything that started with pregnant.
Right, like pregnant, pregnancy, pregnancies, things like that. Probably words you've never even heard of included.
Oh God, I got 179.
Busy bees, working away. Yeah, yeah, good. It's hard to, like, it's like, you know, when you're a teacher, it's hard to know, like, how easy to make things sometimes. And, like, I'm so entrenched in it all the time that I'm like, ooh, that was a really hard question. I should rethink that for an introduction training. So funny.
So here it says how many documents have been published by only this institution.
Florida Institute of Technology.
Yeah.
Did you find, okay, so here, like, we're starting over.
Okay.
Fresh search.
All right.
I don't think I made that very clear.
Okay, I see. Yeah.
So if you go to the Scopus homepage, search for Florida Institute of
I
Technology.
see, okay.
So try
Because I
that.
was like looking, okay.
You're like, I don't see
I was
anything.
like, yeah. Okay, yeah, I can come back to this page
Okay.
like if I
Okay.
do the search.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know if you want me to hold your hand through that one.
Yes, please.
Okay. So let's,
Yeah, I'm good. I'm just kidding.
oh, okay. I'm really gullible, so.
Yes. 179. Yes.
Oh, nice. You did one of the advanced ones. How many documents published cancer cell?
With
Yes.
this one, I'm already stressed.
Which one, number 10?
Yeah. Okay. Was journal was relevant most of those documents from the previous search. So, what I would do is this.
Yes,
And
this is a trick one.
citation overview. No. Okay.
What's the difference between reference and citation? Kind of a trick question. We didn't talk about it.
Yeah, no, that's right. So references are the literature that I cite in the paper.
Yeah.
And citations is the
The ones that come
citations
from
that
other
I
people
get,
after, right?
Yeah, other
Yeah.
people
So to
reference
see
into
the
myself.
references, you actually click on this little dot, dot, dot.
Okay.
View.
Oh, okay. Thank
That was
you.
a trick.
That makes a lot
So you can see all the work that they relied on, right? when they wrote their paper.
Right.
So what happened previously to them?
Okay.
Yes.
So that
It's usually a really, really long
most
list.
references. So I would always go there, and that should give me the list, hopefully.
Yep. And it'll tell you,
Oh,
and it'll tell you what journal was referenced most often. So if you look at documents by source, right? Nature,
Nature. Oh wow.
very common one.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And so nature and first.
Oh, that's the next one.
Yeah.
Do you want to wrap it up? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to bring you guys back together for a minute. I know you all love searching in Scopus now, right? Everyone feels like a pro. We are past time. You're welcome to stay and finish the activity. I know it's a little bit complicated. We didn't get to touch on everything. There's a lot in Scopus to cover in 1 hour. But we do have a raffle. So did everybody sign in on like the paper? Yeah? Everyone signed in? Okay, so what we're going to do is pick a number. Well, I'll pick one. What is it? Between 1 and what?
15.
Okay, 11. So who is number 11? Joshua. You get a Kindle. Hope you like to read. Okay. So thank you guys again for coming. I know it was a lot of information. If you have any questions, you can reach out to your librarians. And if that causes more questions, they reach out to me, right? Or we can do more trainings based on the popularity and if you guys have more requests for future. So with that said, I don't know if you have any comments or, yeah. Okay, well, thank you. And there's lots of free information and little trinkets to take on the way out. There's pens, there's like magnetic chip clips, hand sanitizers, little documents for information about Scopus. So feel free to take some stuff on the way out.